Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another health literacy and psychosocial virtual session organized by SAOPA, a non-profit making organization for the prevention of transmission of HIV and AIDS. SAOPA delivers the following programs: one on healthy youth development, the other on health literacy and psychosocial support, and lastly, on empowerment, skills development, and training. The objectives of the health literacy and psychosocial support programs are to improve the general knowledge and understanding of chronic diseases, to promote adherence to treatment and healthy lifestyle, to enhance the coping mechanisms and mental health of all people, including our youth who are on chronic medication, the families, the caregivers, as well as the community health workers. I've heard that the mind and body connection is the belief that the cause, the development, and the outcomes of a physical illness are determined by the interaction of psychosocial, biological, or it's psychological, biological, as well as social factors. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not an expert. However, we are honored and humbled to have in our midst today a passionate social worker, professional social worker, with vast experience in both the welfare as well as the education sector, both in South Africa and abroad. She was introduced to the world of natural health care in 2006, and in 2015 was introduced to the world of the craniosacral system in the brain and body, and has built up experience in working with families with children with special needs. Ladies and gentlemen, to address us today is no one else than Julia Hastie, and I would like us, to put a round of applause, for him, so that she can take us through this connection between the body and the mind. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm always grateful for your beautiful introduction. And yes, exactly, it's true. We can't say for sure if the physical causes mental distress or the mental distress causes physical, but they certainly interact. And over the last 3 weeks, I have tried to begin to introduce the concept of the body, mind, and brain connection. And this vision that I have, that the caregivers of children with special needs or the elderly or chronically ill people are people who are pushing a wheelbarrow with a special load. It's a wheelbarrow that needs to go on a certain path and carry this precious cargo to the safest place, the fastest, healthiest places they can. And therefore, the caregiver is a critical part of the healthy system. If the caregiver gets tired, if the caregiver has a headache, if the caregiver is emotionally worn out, the caregiver won't be able to push that wagon forward. We're also caregivers of our own health. So I'm not only speaking about taking care of someone else, but we need to take care of ourselves. And if our shoulders and necks and heads and bodies and backs and legs get tired, we're going to start struggling to move our health forward too. What I'd like to do is share a summary of what I've spoken of over the last 2 weeks. And let's see if it still makes sense. So we started with the concept that there's more to the brain than just the head brain that we traditionally know. There's a head brain, and this head brain is full of knowledge and information. It can get hurt. An accident, a surgery, a disease, a bad fall, birth trauma can hurt our brains, and we know that. And we often see the symptoms of that in our patients. The good news is that our brains can change and grow every day. Every single brain, whether it's an old brain, young brain, and we're not limited to how hurt it is, to how much it can change and grow with the right input. The news that was quite interesting for a lot of people is the way that the brain moves in the skull. It has an expansion and contraction cycle, and the skull has a gentle movement too. And all of that keeps the circulation over the brain, down the spine, moving in a beautiful flow. When we're talking about the head brain, I think one of the most important senses to use are your eyes. Have a look at the patient and you'll get a lot of information. Are they sitting slumped? Do they show signs of pain? Are they very pale? Do they seem tense? Our eyes give us a lot of information, and if we take a moment to have a look around, if we take a look at all the information that's available, if we use our eyes to read, we really can use our head brain to fill it with good knowledge and information. The exercise we learned in the first week to help support this head brain is an exercise where you check in with your own head and jaw and neck. Feel over your jaw. Feel in the places where you rub when you have a headache, and become aware of tensions. If we take a moment and truly feel into those tensions, we can start making decisions. We can see what we need to do to deal with them. But if we're not even aware that we may be grinding our teeth through tension in our jaw, we won't be able to deal with it. After that, we suggested that having checked into the head and the skull and the neck and the jaw, take a moment to work your way through the whole body. Feel into the shoulders, the back, the pelvis, the thighs, and the feet. And really spend some time working through the whole body and bringing it to rest. If we've had a lot of worries and a lot of concern and a lot of information coming into our head all the time, we sometimes forget about our bodies. We don't even notice what's going on. So this is an excellent exercise to practice every day. I recommend on going to sleep, unless you're going to fall asleep before, but at least once a day to stop and check in with tensions over the head and body. So that was the head brain. The second brain I wanted to share about is called the heart brain. And I'm going to find that picture for us. There we go. So the heart brain is news to a lot of people, or maybe it's news that there's science supporting this feeling of a heart brain, but most people will tell you when they experience pain, emotional pain, when they experience joy and pride, they in fact do feel it in the chest. So we know that our heart brain is full of emotion. Our heart brain is what allows connection between all people. We know that our hearts are naturally filled with love, but our hearts can get hurt. Dr. Nolwazi can talk more about how the physical heart can get hurt through, same as the head brain, injury, trauma, medication. I think we've seen a lot of our COVID patients suffer from heart injury, but we also know that loss and abuse and trauma can cause a hardening of the heart. However, we also know that the heart will give and receive care and nurturing. That's how we're made as human beings. And as we soften the heart and take care of it, including our own, we can give and receive caring and nurturing. And if we're struggling to give and receive care and nurturing, we need to have a look at that part of our heart brain. Physically and emotionally, we know that the heart expands when we feel joy and love and pride. And when we feel sad or fearful, the heart becomes tight and heavy. We spoke about the connection between the heart in the chest and the emotional brain, which is on the sides, the limbic brain, and how our nose, our sense of smell, has a direct pathway to the emotional brain. So there were two practices to add into that awareness of the tension over the brain. The one is to practice deep breathing often. It doesn't have to be when you're falling asleep. It can be in the bath. It can be when you're reading and sitting in transport. while you're eating, you're going to practice taking 3 deep breaths in, pause, 3 slow breaths out. This will allow any emotions that are bubbling up in the heart and feelings that are pushing us everywhere to come to rest. The key is in that pause. 3 seconds out, pause. 3 seconds in. And as the breathing becomes deeper, you'll feel a change in the head brain and the heart brain. And then the exercise for the limbic brain was to find 3 natural smells. I used an example of a lemon, a flower, ginger, and breathe that smell deeply. So I really want to train that nerve that goes from the nose through the emotional brain over and over and over. In this situation, it's absolutely critical that we don't use chemicals. Chemicals over the brain is what we're definitely trying to avoid. Our third brain that I'm going to introduce tonight is called the heart brain. Now, the heart brain, pardon me, not the heart brain, is the gut brain. And who would have known that deep in our gut, below our chest, is in fact another brain that is filled with as many nerves and sensors feeding information back to the heart and head as there are in the head and heart. And remember, we're working in this series towards finding how can we bring the 3 into harmony with each other? How can we bring the information from our head brain, that knowledge, using our eyes to see information and process it, using our hearts to feel into the connection around us, what is being held back, what is true, what is uplifting, what is sad, feeding that into with working with the brain, head brain, and then finally the gut brain. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at the gut brain. Firstly, and this will be Tongi and Dr. Nolwazi's primary focus, I'm not equipped to even begin to share it all, is the health of the gut is critical to the functioning of our gut brain. There's a huge role to play in nutrition there, in things like parasites and candida overgrowth. If the state of the gut is unhealthy, if the gut is, for example, very acidic, if the nutrition is poor, it will affect how well the gut brain operates. And before I say any more, I wondered if I should ask if somebody had a comment they wanted to add.
Still listening, Julia. Very interesting.
Good, thank you. So firstly, first rule of gut brain is nutrition and repair. So I advise you strongly, please listen to Tongi and Dr. Nolwazi if they speak about gut health. If the gut is unhealthy on a physical level, it will be very difficult for it to give good information back to our heart and head brain. Secondly, a whole lot of what's called neurotransmitters are produced in the gut. Now, a neuro implies a nerve cell transmitter is produced in the gut and then spread to the rest of the body. And these neurotransmitters are hormones like serotonin and dopamine. And those are chemicals that our brains use to make us feel good. Now, that's very interesting. We have the heart-brain connection where a hug or a moment of compassion or a caring touch can make our heart-brain feel better. A positive thought or a positive word can make our head brain feel better. But imagine that keeping our gut health healthy can make us feel better too. The chemicals that keep us anxiety and depression away are produced in the gut, and then they travel into the brain and the rest of the body. So it really is almost impossible to say that we can be happy and healthy without a healthy gut. And so if you thought happiness was only in your heart, maybe you've learned something new tonight. Now, as with the heart brain, one of the things that affects the gut is trauma. a terrible shock. I saw a lady an hour ago this afternoon. A child in their family got COVID and got very ill. And she described that since she did that drive to the hospital in Bloemfontein, not knowing what she'd seen, her gut's never really been the same. And of course, that makes sense. If a person's had a terrible shock and their gut has gone tight, and all those neurotransmitters and chemicals in their guts have become completely disordered by trauma, that after that, her digestion has never been the same. And I think it's such a good example of how we cannot separate out the body, mind, and brain connection. As Cynthia said in the introduction, was that digestion problem caused by an emotional or a mental issue? Maybe her gut wasn't in perfect health and that's why it got hurt by the mental pain. We don't know. What we do know is we need to work on repairing it so that it can feel more comfortable. I'm going to move on to two other aspects of the gut. So the gut kind of means this general area in our tummy. And our gut is, of course, where we get that a different kind of information, a knowing. We know when someone is not telling the truth. We know when someone is hiding something. We know where a story doesn't add up. We know when we need to change our route and try something else. We know when someone comes to mind and we need to phone them. We know that. It's a knowing that does not come from the head brain. It comes from the gut. And people say, I feel it. I just knew. And it's a very, very powerful source of information in our body and mind and brain. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all use our head brain to find knowledge, our heart brain to get information from around us about what's happening in terms of connection and expansion, and our gut to inform us. In fact, we might want to start with the gut. You might be going down a pathway of looking at a certain care or medication or treatment plan or exercise regime, and the gut will be the first one to say, ask more questions, be careful, or that feeling of yes. Just as our heart knows love, it's made of love, it is natural to us, our gut knows what's right. So if the gut does that expansive, soft feeling of yes, and you know something is the truth, you know something is, this is the right person for you, this is the right program for you, by all means, include the heart and say, am I being influenced by my feelings? Or are my feelings giving me good information? And of course, you're still going to use the head brain to do the research to say, what is the research that proves what my gut says? But nobody ever had a good result from ignoring the gut. Now, some people call the information that comes from the gut intuition. There are a lot of different descriptions for that information, but I'd like to share a picture of a nerve, the nerve of intuition, if we can call it like that. I'm going to share this screen. And what we have here is a picture of something called the vagus nerve. Now, it's actually on both sides, but it's just too complicated in a drawing to show both sides because then the whole picture will just be yellow. The vagus nerve on each side starts very deep in the brain. It comes through the throat, through the neck, across the throat. Look how it runs through the heart, quite a big way. And it zigzags all the way through the entirety of the gut. Now, that is interesting. What is, for me, the most fascinating part about the vagus nerve is that the nerve runs back to the brain. And when it goes back to the brain, it gives it a whole lot of information that we call intuition. The information, that gut feeling, that sense of knowing, this is a yes or this is a no, or be careful, comes along the vagus nerve. And again, Cynthia, how can we say the body and mind and brain are not connected? The nerve literally runs through the pathway of all three. What I find fascinating about the vagus nerve too is, you know how it runs through the throat? It's one of the things that makes the throat pull tight when we're afraid or we don't want to speak. It regulates heart rate. So you know when you're afraid or nervous or you know something is untrue, your heart beats faster. That's the vagus nerve. You know how your gut can go tight like this? That's the vagus nerve. It's a very physical part of our body, giving us brilliant information about what's going back. And it truly is my wish that people are able to integrate all three. I'm going to stop for a moment in case anyone has anything to add.
So Julia, it is important to have a healthy gut, because if the gut is unhealthy, obviously it's going to impact on other body parts, whether it's our brain, our heart, and so forth. So very, very, very important. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's going to impact on our other organs. It's going to impact on a lot of the physical parts of our body. But just imagine your gut was full of toxins and old waste. Do we really think that our sense of intuition, that the vagus nerve is going to get crisp, clear information going back to the heart and head brain? It just doesn't make sense. And then a person's gut starts to become less reliable. I still think it's the most reliable of the three brains, but it's really not a part of our body that we want bogged down, toxic, unhealthy, and sluggish. That gut is supposed to be fast to help you make good decisions. And if it's weighed down with old waste, it's not going to be as effective. So absolutely, gut health is critical. And of all the things I like to do with the body, I've learned over the years, you can't beat quality nutrition. You really can't. It is the number one treatment for so many parts of our body, and particularly the gut. What I'd also like to do is, if people aren't too exhausted, break down the gut into two, technically there are three parts. So the first is the stomach, that's just under the chest. That's where you might get heartburn from, for example. That's the place the food arrives when you've had something to eat or drink. And the job of the stomach is to turn that food around and around and around and make it into slush, a mush, so that your rest of your digestive system can work. So, of course, we want that gut nice and crisp and clear and fast acting. But here's even more interesting. From the stomach, it goes towards the right into the small intestine. And the small intestine are those little tubes you'll see in pictures. It's meters and meters long. And the small intestine has a very important job to do. The small intestine absorbs all the good nutrition from that slushy food, all the vitamins, all the minerals that you need. Now, if your gut is toxic and sluggish and not in great shape, it's going to struggle to do that. And your quality of absorption of nutrition is going to be poor. But that's not my area of expertise. If your gut is there's a lot of information out in the world. And for sick people, there's a lot of people telling them a lot of things. You can't go to Pick and Pay without the person behind you saying, have you heard about turmeric, CBD, this healer in Pumalanga, breathing, sleeping water? I know people importing special water from Fiji because someone told them it'll give them a miracle cure. If your small intestine ability, your ability to look at all this information that's going on around you, you want that small intestine function to absorb what is good. Most ideas have something good in them, just like most foods probably have something practical in them. If you've got a strong gut brain, strong small intestine brain, you'll be able to sift through all of this information and absorb what is good. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Now, once it's left the small intestine and the goodness has been absorbed, that mush goes into the large intestine. That's that thicker piece of intestine. And that's where the waste needs to leave. And I think I've already spoken at length about the importance of your body not being clogged by waste, because there's a lot of nonsense out there. There's a lot of bad ideas. There are a lot of unhealthy ideas, and sadly, a lot of rubbish. And if your gut brain is in good, strong condition, it will get rid of that waste. No need to absorb it. No need to go round and round on it in the stomach. Let it go. Let the waste, the junk, the bad ideas, the rubbish just go to waste. It'll cleanse the body and allow the goodness to be absorbed. So, 2 interesting extra aspects of the intestines to look at. Now, up until now, we've used the comparison of using the sense of sight to give knowledge and information to the head brain, the sense of smell to smell out good information for the heart, and our next sense that we're going to use is the sense of hearing. And this is the exercise, but I'm going to pause for a moment. I wasn't sure if someone wanted to add something about the intestines.
All is well. Keep going, girl.
Good. So this is an exercise and my environment is testing me, and the tests in our environment are part of the exercise. Please, okay, let me start at the beginning. So imagine there's this head brain and it's full of ideas and could be good, could be bad. And now you've got to sift through it, but now I've said the small intestine. So the mind has a way of getting very busy, right? And that's why we learned that exercise of stopping and really turning our attention to tensions over the head and neck and body, and giving our mind's attention to each part of the body. And that brings all that thinking down, 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 down. Then we looked at looking at the heart brain and feeling, is there hardening? Is there an inability or a struggle somewhere with giving and receiving love? And how we need to really connect with that heart and other people's hearts so that our heart brain can function, but also our limbic brain, our emotional brain, can be given those beautiful smells to help it come to rest. We're also going to use deep and slow breathing. With the deep and slow breathing, the heart rate will come down and come to rest. So the exercise for the gut brain is to use the sense of hearing. So imagine it's that quiet time. If it's only once a day, that's fine. But don't hesitate to use it a lot more than that. And so what you'll do, I'm going to give it a minute. Is having brought your mind to rest and your heart to rest, you're going to make a decision to not listen to the noise in your head, whether it's good or bad, friendly, happy. We're going to move away from the noise in the head. We're going to focus on the sense of hearing. And we're going to start by listening just in the room where you are to what sounds there are. And at first you might say, this is ridiculous. But that's because our mind's usually so busy of so many sounds, we're not even aware. Maybe your printer is nearby making a little sound. Maybe my dog's running down the passage and his paws are making a sound. There are sounds around us all the time. And when we stop and focus on our sense of hearing, all sorts of new information come to us, and it takes the mind away from all those rushing ideas. You can either listen to all your ideas, blah, 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 or you can listen to what is happening in the room. I don't know if the microphone could pick up a Hardy dog just went by. So we're going to expand the hearing. The hearing is going to go beyond the room. And in that room and in that body, you might hear your heart start beating. You might hear a whirring on your computer. You might in another room hear somebody get a notification on their cell phone. You might hear a doorbell. As you develop your hearing and really focus on only what you really, really can hear, you're going to notice there's some crickets outside. We've been talking for 33 minutes and I never heard those crickets. But now I can hear them, and some birds. And as we let the hearing run further out, suddenly I can hear traffic quite a few blocks away, but there's traffic. Now, if your mind is all agitating, saying, this is ridiculous, I don't feel like listening to the sounds in my own space, well, then it means your mind is feeling very agitated, or maybe your heart, and all the more reason to practice the listening exercise. Because as soon as you try practicing it for the first time, I assure you, you will discover you can either listen to what's going on in your head or what's really happening around you. And when we give our body and mind and brain a chance to listening to what is happening around us, we're giving it a rest from all of this and all of this. And who wouldn't like some rest from that? So with the listening exercise, still the mind as much as one can, still the heart as much as one can. Turn to the sense of hearing. Listen to the sounds in the room, in this body, in this space. And once you've started hearing it, expand it further and further. Now the mind will have a habit. The mind will say, oh, I know that's probably in the traffic I hear, it could be my neighbor. And I wonder if the neighbor, no, that's not listening anymore. That's listening to ideas. Bring it back. What do my ears tell me? So it might take a little bit of practice to get used to this exercise. It is quite different than the way we used to living. We were joking just before this YouTube when I said, I'm terrible at doing and thinking and talking at the same time. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to share a screen and talk at the same time, because this kind of multitasking, doing everything at once, is really not going to help us. Bringing, in this case, the sense of hearing here and further and further. And when the mind comes in, we let it go and we listen. I really wish there's quite a loud bird song right outside this window. Incredibly restful. Think of that vagus nerve that was so tense in the gut coming to rest. That vagus nerve's running through the heart brain, and that heart brain maybe was heavy from sadness or pain, coming to rest. All the way up into the brain. A break from the noise and a connection with what's really around us. So, thank you. Those are our practices for the week. Stick always with first feeling for tensions, feeling what's going on in the brain, connecting to the heart and the rest of the body, the breathing. And now we use the sense of hearing. And if you've got the time to do this for 5 or 8 or 10 minutes a day, it can truly transform the head, heart, and mind. If you've only got 2 minutes, take the 2. If you can do 5 times 10 minutes a day, sure, you will find an amazing change in health. Thank you. If there are any questions, I will be here.
Wow, thank you very much, Julia, for sharing the wealth of information. And yeah, indeed, each time I listen to these sessions, yeah, I get more and more educated. And I think very soon, who knows, one would also be, more informed, and one would also be in a position to can Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that the video is off. One would also be in a position to can actually share, the information that you are actually sharing with us today. And thank you very much, much appreciated. I'm not sure we still have time. I'm not sure if the viewers out there would still want to perhaps, ask questions, to Julia, or make some comments based on the information that was just shared.
Yes.
I think from yes, yeah.
Yes. Julia, how would one know that they've got a problem in their gut? How would they know?
Well, I think Julia can perhaps assist in terms of answering the question. Yes, I did pick up from the discussion that it is crucial to have a healthy gut, and if the gut is not healthy, I think because of the connection that is there, obviously it's going to impact, on one's functioning. But I think perhaps Julia can assist in terms of indicating or what are the symptoms or a dysfunctional gut, so that we could always be, on the lookout and alert if something's wrong with our gut.
Before I answer, I just want to check if Dr. Nolwazi had something she wanted to add. Or I can speak so long if she's busy organizing her thoughts to say, firstly, it wouldn't be fair for me to give an absolute answer of this is how it is for everyone from the medical point of view. The fact is, one of the main ways our body gives us information is through pain, through nausea. And a symptom that people often overlook with gut imbalances is in fact cravings. So people say, oh, I feel so bad, I feel I shouldn't, I'm wrong, I'm nasty, I'm bad for having cravings. This is Patrick's field. Cravings in the gut are often a symptom of an overgrowth in the gut and a craving for something to feed it. But Dr. Nolwazi, I'd appreciate it if you'll jump on here.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Julia. And just to add on to some of the signs and symptoms that you've shared, another sign or symptom would be, bloating. Patients would also present with constipation, diarrhea, heartburn. Sometimes you can even get, skin irritation as a sign of an unhealthy gut. So it's quite a number of things that even sleep disturbances are also a sign of an unhealthy gut. So there's quite a number of signs and symptoms that one can present with. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alwazi. Thank you.
If I can add one.
Oh, okay,
sorry.
thank you. Continue, Julia.
For me, the way I see it, and again, Dr. Nolwazi will confirm this for me, is that it's a combination of what we're putting in, and of course we don't want to put junk in, and what we may need to remove. So if there's a lot of waste, we'd need to remove that. If there's an unhealthy imbalance of the bacteria growth in the gut has become imbalanced, it will have an effect and we might need to get rid of. So it's always a matter of looking at both. Often people who feel unwell or say special needs children get into a habit of only eating a certain kind of food. I can't tell you how many of my clients will say, my child only eats a certain kind of pancakes and fish fingers. The most common thing my clients will say to me is, my child will only eat 1 of 4 kinds of food. In my mind, that is a nutritional imbalance. The gut's made to take in the wonders of all food. And if there's an inability to do that, we know there's an imbalance. Chongi, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Julia. I asked because I thought, maybe some people might not even know what is that, but if we know that a healthy diet, actually, it's what's vital more than anything. Thank you, Julia.
Well, thank you very much, Tongi. Thank you very much, Tongi. And once more, thank you very much, Julia, for the wealth of information that you've just shared. As I've already alluded to, some of us are getting educated. Each time we attend these sessions, we become more educated, and it's good because I think I personally believe that I could be able, to look after myself, my health, and also, to the significant others, in my life. I'm not sure if there are other. Wow, I'm not sure if there are other questions that the team or the audience would like to ask Julia, based on the presentation that she has just made, or the presentation that she has just shared with us today. Are there other questions or clarity, issues that you'd like to further ask?
If other questions come in, I can always make a note to address them at the start of next time.
All right, okay. No, it's fine. All right. Okay. No, thank you very much, Julia. It seems as if there are no questions, or people are still actually digesting, what you've just shared with us. Who knows? So probably the questions will come also in the next session. People can sort of reflect and ask some clarity-seeking questions, to address whatever concerns that they have. But on that note, thank you very much for the wealth of information. Yeah, very, very interesting. I always look forward to these sessions because, as I said, I become, educated myself. But I think the most important thing is to be able to look after oneself, to say what kind of modifications, do I do so that I can be able to live, a healthy life. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for attending the session, and to Julia, as I said, for sharing the wealth of information. A word of gratitude to our partners, particularly the Department of Health, for always, supporting SAOPA, to our consortium members, as well as, the community at large. Remember, without the community, there will be no SAOPA, because they are the recipient of the services that, SAOPA offers. And lastly, also, I think it would actually be a mistake not to acknowledge our healthcare workers, who attended the previous debriefing, because you keep on inspiring SAOPA, you actually keep on giving, SAOPA hopes, because without the healthcare workers, there would be no SAOPA. So a word of, gratitude, to you. And I must also, I'm very, very much excited, to share with you that, SAOPA is actually exploring other platforms, avenues, to disseminate the information that is being shared, in these sessions. So, and I think your WhatsApp, and so forth. So I think as time goes on, we'll be able to sort of share more, of these platforms, because we want to reach out, to as many people as we can. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, thank you very much for attending today's session, and thank you very much, Julia, for the information that you just said. Till we meet, I think tomorrow, we will actually be meeting again to sort of take a talk to matters of nutrition. On that note, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and stay blessed.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you,
Bye.
Julia.
Bye. Thank you.